Welcome, everyone, to the Strengthening Partnerships for Students with Disabilities webinar series. Our session topic is at the intersection of race and disability and centering student voice and partnering with families to improve outcomes for Black students. This presentation is brought to you by the California Department of Education, Special Education Division, and the Seeds of Partnership Project. Thank you for taking the time out of your schedules to join us. Next slide. As we get started, I want to point out that we have a few language options for this session. American Sign Language will be spotlighted. Captions and translated captions can be accessed by finding the Show Captions icon at the bottom of the Zoom menu and selecting the arrow. This opens up a menu where you select the translation button. If it's turned blue, then it's active. On the menu, choose My Captions, where you'll select the language you'd like captions to display. For example, the slide shows the speaking language is English and what it looks like if I'm choosing to display Spanish captions. I'll pause to share this instruction in Spanish for the translated captions.
Tenemos algunas opciones de idiomas para esta sesión. Lenguaje americano de señas, que se destacará. Subtítulos traducidos en otros idiomas que usted puede acceder encontrando el botón que dice Show Captions en la parte inferior de la pantalla del menú de Zoom y seleccione la flecha hacia arriba. Esto abrirá otro menú donde puede seleccionar el botón de traducción. Si el botón está en color azul, significa que está activo. En el menú, escoja My Caption Language y escoja el idioma que usted desee leer los subtítulos. Por ejemplo, esta diapositiva dice que el idioma hablado es inglés y que los subtítulos estarán en español. Daremos unos segundos para que puedan configurar.
My name is Robin Ryan, and I'm the coordinator of the Seeds of Partnership project.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Cinta Green, and I am a national expert for the Seeds of Partnership and the co-executive director of Full Circle Consulting Systems, Inc. And I'm truly happy to be here with you today and co-facilitate this experience with Robin Ryan.
So supporting in this session are colleagues from Seeds of Partnership and the California Department of Education Special Education Division. So we're excited to bring forward this webinar series. Our goal is to create a space where families of children and young adults with disabilities, educators, and other professionals come together to learn and connect with effective strategies, resources, and insights that support students with disabilities. Sharing knowledge and experiences through presentations and spotlights, our aim is that these sessions will inspire meaningful conversation, foster collaboration, and highlight voices of parents, students, educators, and others who support to make a difference in the lives of students. Our topics are generated from direct input from both families and educators in California, and we look forward to adding additional areas highlighted by those of you joining us today. You'll be able to tune into a recording and complete a feedback form. Over to you, Senta.
Thank you. A significant part of this work is getting your feedback, like Robin shared. So we are going to add the link to the feedback form now to the chat box. The link will also be displayed on the screen toward the end of the session. And we hope you take the time to share your thoughts with us about the session and considerations for future sessions. This session is also being recorded. It will be available on our Seeds website in the e-learning gallery, where you can also find previous recordings and registrations for upcoming webinars.
So for those of you not too familiar with Seeds, Seeds of Partnership is a longstanding technical assistance project, and it's operated through the Sacramento County Office of Education and funded by the California Department of Education Special Education Division, and is a key part of California's established infrastructure for family support for students with disabilities. We partner with the California Department of Education on a variety of initiatives, and the work spans across several areas. including providing training, developing resources, and offering support that centers the family experience and builds the capacity of both families and local education agencies to work together as true partners in supporting students with disabilities, assisting with compliance improvement monitoring, and coordinating support for the 33 family empowerment centers across California. To learn more about our work, we invite you to visit our website, www.seedsofpartnership.org. Next slide, please.
Well, one of the things that we want to say up front is that you could have been anywhere else in the world today, but you chose to be here. And so, for that reason and many more, we thank you. We want to take a few moments to help anchor our time together, and we want to name this session and what it's designed to hold as well as support. Together, we will explore how race and disability intersect to shape the experiences and outcomes of Black students, and to think about deeply how educational systems can respond with intentionality, care, and partnership. We'll also hear directly from a panel of leaders who are parents, students, and educators who bring both professional expertise and lived experience, centering the voices most impacted by the educational systems. Time will also be dedicated to examining ongoing challenges, to celebrate progress, and leave with practical strategies to strengthen family engagement and ultimately improve outcomes for Black students with disabilities.
So in our webinar series, we typically will highlight an organization resource, promising practice, and/or successful partnership. And in this session, we touch on all of these through a discussion panel and a curated resource document. We've convened a panel to join with us today with 4 colleagues and partners, and we will introduce them as we open our panel, but I want to call their names out here as we get started. Helena Donato Sapp, Dr. Tanette Powell, Dr. Yvette Baptiste, and Dr. Carla Bryant. And we're looking forward to hearing from them in a little while as we open the panel. Next slide, please. I'd like to now welcome our California Department of Education Special Education Division Director, Dr. Rachel Heenan, for some opening remarks.
Thank you, Robin. Good morning, everyone. As Robin said, my name is Rachel Heenan. I'm the Division Director of Special Education at the California Department of Ed, and I'm really pleased to welcome you to the 13th session of our Strengthening Partnership for Students with Disabilities webinar series. 13. It's a milestone that reflects our shared commitment to this work. As you know, these sessions have been instrumental in bringing us together across the state to focus on strengthening partnerships and improving outcomes for students with disabilities. Over the course of the series, we've explored critical topics such as strengthening relationships between the home and the school, to supporting dually identified students, our students with disabilities who are English language learners, to understanding parental rights and procedural safeguards, our family empowerment centers, working with our deaf and hard of hearing earliest learners, and so much more. So each session has brought us closer to our shared goal, and that is to improve outcomes for students with disabilities by bringing together the voices of our students, our families, and our educators. And today's session is especially meaningful. We're intentionally centering the voices, lived experiences, and leadership of Black and African American students with disabilities, families, communities, experts, including a critical perspective of focusing on the voice of students themselves. We begin from a clear understanding that those closest to the experience or lived experience must be closest to the solution. So elevating our Black and African American voices strengthens not only our understanding, but our responsibility to build systems that are more responsive, more equitable, and more effective. So I want to acknowledge also that today's topic is both important but complex. These conversations can be challenging to some, but they are necessary if we're to create meaningful and lasting change. This work is grounded in both CDE's and the Special Ed Division's mission and vision, as well as represented in our state's data. So as you know, across California, we serve a large and growing population of students with disabilities. And at the same time, our data continue to show inequities, particularly for Black and African American students. Black and African American students are more likely to be disciplined at higher rates, identified for special education at higher rates, and placed in more restrictive settings. So let me be clear, these patterns are not a reflection of our students. They are a reflection of our systems and a call to action really for all of us. So when we see these patterns, we must ask ourselves, are the systems truly serving our students, or do we need to change? Because behind every data point is a student with the right to learn, to belong, and to thrive. So this commitment is reflected in the leadership of our state superintendent of public instruction, Mr. Tony Thurman, and the implementation of our Black Student Achievement Initiative. And this initiative provides tools and resources to support schools, agencies, county offices, families, communities in strengthening outcomes for our Black and African American students. I also want to take a moment to acknowledge and thank Mr. Will McGee. He's our Deputy Superintendent of Public Instruction, who oversees the Building Educational Success Together branch. They call that the BEST branch, for joining us today. So Deputy McGee's leadership in advancing the state's superintendent's Black Student Initiative continues to be instrumental in supporting the work across California. In the special education division, this work is also a priority, not because of federal law that requires us to address these disparities, but because it's our moral obligation to ensure that every student, regardless of their race or ability, has the opportunity to succeed. So some of you may ask, why focus on Black student achievement? Well, because when we design systems that effectively support students who have been historically underserved, we create better outcomes for all students. When we center our strengths, our partnerships with families, and address systemic barriers, we build stronger, more inclusive systems for everyone. So that brings us to today's session, called At the Intersection of Race and Disability, Centering Student Voice and Partnering with Families to Improve Outcomes for Black Students. We are honored to be joined by an incredible panel of parents, advocates, educators, leaders, and students who will share their lived experience, their insights, and strategies. And I want to thank every one of them for their leadership and willingness to share their experience and their perspective. I also want to extend my appreciation to all of you, as was discussed at the beginning, for being here today. Your presence really reflects the shared commitment to advancing outcomes for students with disabilities across California. And finally, thank you to our partners, especially Robin Ryan, the Seeds of Partnership team at the Sacramento County Office of Education, for their continued leadership in making this series possible. Thank you all for your time, your partnership, and your dedication. So let's move forward together. Thank you, Robin.
Thank you, Dr. Heenan. So before we move on to our panel, we want to take a moment to further ground us all in a few key areas and why this topic matters for students. This work to improve systems, practices, experiences, and outcomes for Black students belongs to all of us, whether you're a parent, an educator, a service provider, or a system leader. For families, parents, and students, your lived experience, voice, and advocacy are central to this work. Let's learn from you, and let's learn together with you. And whether you're a Black parent or a student or you're not, let's encourage and lift up one another to better student outcomes. For educators and service providers, every interaction matters. Every IEP meeting, disciplinary moment, every classroom decision is a chance to either interrupt or reinforce the patterns that are driving the outcomes we're here to talk about today. For system leaders, the data is telling us something. It's a call to look honestly at policies, how resources are allocated, and what conditions you're creating for Black students and their families. Our work is to support students with disabilities and their families in California. And today we're focusing on Black students as the data and the stories and the lived experiences of families tell us that this is an area that demands our attention and our action. Next slide, please.
As we move into the conversation with our panel today, we want to invite you to listen with your mind, your heart, and intention. Our hope today is that the experience and information does more than deepen understanding, that it begins to shape how we think, how we respond, how we care, and how we show up for students and families. Because every new awareness or even affirmation of what we already know can carry with it an opportunity to act differently, to interrupt patterns, and create change through attention and action. So today, we invite you to think about and engage yourself in the following questions as you're reflecting on and hearing the wisdom, the lived experience, the insight that is coming from our panel. The first question we're asking you to ponder is, what is this conversation inviting me to see, consider, or even do differently? How can I strengthen and improve outcomes for Black students that receive special education services? And what seeds of transformation can come from just being present here today? And when this webinar ends and all is said and done, and you log off of Zoom, what will be different about the way you see, you serve, and you advocate for Black students that receive special education services within your role, your sphere of influence, and how will you ensure that change lasts? I love that last piece. It's really important. We can go to seminars, webinars, and professional development experiences all the time. The question is, how will the information continue to live with us? We're going to go to the next slide and do just a little bit of framing. And we're super excited to bring our panelists forward. But we want to take a few moments and deepen our understanding in regards to the language that we're using for today's webinar. We want to do this with intention and respect. We know that words hold power, and we recognize that the terms Black and African American are not always interchangeable, and they're not for everyone, and that identity is deeply personal, it's contextual, and it's evolving. So we want to lift the view and the perspective when we use the term Black, what are we actually referring to? Because Black is not a monolithic or one way of looking at a group of people, nor their lived experiences. So in our training today, we are framing this language and we're using the term Black as a more expansive and inclusive descriptor, one that reflects the richness of the African diaspora. This includes individuals born and raised in the United States, as well as people who has journeys extending and coming from places such as Jamaica, Cuba, Haiti, Trinidad, Tobago, Nigeria, Ethiopia, Ghana, Somalia, and beyond. In this way, by framing the language, we seek to honor shared experiences and equally important to understand the diverse cultural, historic, and global entities and identities that shape what it actually means to be Black. So we're just going to pause and ask you to take that in for a moment and think about the different cultural experiences, ethnic experiences, and national experiences that come into your communities, into your schools that represent the Black African diaspora. And on that note, we're going to move into introducing our panel, which we're super excited about.
So now I'd like to take a moment to introduce today's speakers and invite them to join us as we introduce them. I'll start with our first two, and then Senta will introduce the remaining two. So it's my pleasure to introduce Helena Donato Sapp. She's a junior at Orange County School of Arts. She is a globally award-winning disability justice activist. She's also an accomplished youth scholar with peer-reviewed journal publications on ableism and disability justice for collective liberation in the journal Equity and Excellence in Education, and chapters in scholarly books like How Special Education Hurt Me, in the Handbook of Critical Special Education, Black Feminism in the book titled Young Global Changemakers for a Feminist Future, and Black Girl Magic is a Glorious Gift in the book titled Strong Black Girls. Helena is a commissioner on the California Department of Education's Advisory Commission on Special Education. Welcome, Helena. And we have Dr. Tinette Powell, who is an activist mama, freedom dreamer, and storyteller whose scholarship is focused on issues of race, racism, kinship, community, education, and documenting system-induced collective trauma. She's been featured in every major daily newspaper and has appeared on Oprah's Life Class, CNN, and MSNBC. Her professional career has been profoundly shaped by the year 2014, when her two oldest sons, 3 and 4 years old at the time, were suspended from preschool, an experience that sparked her lifelong commitment to transforming education for Black children and families. Dr. Powell is an assistant research professor and the director of parent and family partnerships at the Children's Equity Project. Dr. Powell has committed her scholarship, advocacy, and storytelling to disrupting system-induced collective trauma and centering truth, joy, and freedom dreams of historically and contemporarily marginalized communities. Welcome to you both, and thank you for being here.
It is my honor to introduce two voices who bring expertise, truth, and lived experience, and I have had the honor to witness their leadership in action. The first panelist I'm going to introduce is Dr. Yvette Baptiste. She is the Interim Executive Director of the Family Resource Centers Network of California and the Executive Director of the Eastern Los Angeles Family Resource Center. She has 39 years of experience in the California Developmental Disabilities Service System in almost every role that you can imagine. She has served as a direct support staff at 6-bed group homes, an early interventionist, an adult services program manager, a corporate training director for a large nonprofit providing statewide services. She has years of experience as a social worker for several family agencies. She is a clinical psychologist with a specialization in disability, community, and cultural psychology. She is the mother of 3 children who have special health care, behavioral, and developmental needs. Dr. Baptiste and her team of experts and individuals that work and make up the statewide system. She is incredibly proud to represent them in her voice of advocacy and to walk united beside them. She is a first generation immigrant to the US from Panama and a daughter of a woman with a disability. She is particularly sensitive to understanding issues of those who face economic and institutional bias when trying to access the services and supports most important to pursue freedom, hopes, and dreams. We're so thankful to have you with us, Dr. Baptiste, and it's also my joy and honor to introduce Dr. Carla Bryant, who has served over 30 years of national experience creating culturally competent policies, programs, and procedures for comprehensive early learning. The P3 elementary family support, comprehensive learning, and after school programs have been a signature part of her work as well. She is the co founder of the Center for District Innovation and Leadership in Early Childhood Education, which sits in Cultivate Learning at the University of Washington. She focuses on supporting school districts to succeed in creating and implementing effective early learning structures that assist children from communities with less social, political, and monetary capital to build a strong educational foundation. One of the things I'll share as we're thinking about the voices that are getting ready to come forward and still centered on Dr. Bryant is that she has served as the chief of the early education department for San Francisco Unified School District, which she has successfully implemented a P12 vision aligning curriculum and instruction across grades. She oversaw the development and implementation of a TK transitional kindergarten program, and during her tenure at San Francisco Unified School District and her kindergarten readiness benchmarks, she improved from 37% to 55% within 3 years. lot of information. We just want to ground all of you and understand the power and the beauty of the voices that are coming forward and the deep expertise and lived experience that each one of them bring. So, from the bottom and top of our hearts, we're so thankful that you're here with us today. And we're going to actually begin with one of our first questions that we would like for you to come forward on. And this question that I'm going to bring forward is going to start with the voice of Helena. And Helena, I want to welcome you and ask you to share with us, thinking for a moment about your lived experience. What have you noticed about what supports or gets in the way of supporting Black students with disabilities?
It is two sides of the same coin, but I would say that what gets in the way of supporting Black students with disabilities is anti-Blackness and ableism on one side of the coin, and the other side is the world's reaction to Black excellence. As a Black student in America's public schools, I had to slowly learn what anti-Blackness was and how commonplace it is in my schooling experience. Some pieces of anti-blackness are clear, like the fact that I only had two Black characters in all of the literature school had me read in grades 1 to 5. One was an unnamed slave, and the other was a murder suspect. But other pieces of anti-blackness are really difficult to figure out, even though I can feel something is off, like why some white teachers just don't seem to like me or anything I contribute, or like how academic expectations for me are lowered, but at the same time, I adultified as a young Black girl and more is expected of my behaviors. The other side of the coin is when I do what would be considered extraordinary in any education space, but it is ignored or diminished. Like when I won a Global Youth Award for Educational Leadership out of London, but it was never recognized. Um, it's a damned if you damned don't kind of situation where no matter what I do, it is only seen as less than. And on the other hand, I have had a few experiences with my Black and disabled body being supported in my newest school, Orange County School of the Arts in Santa Ana, California. And it's the only school I've been in that saw my work and began to ask me to contribute my assets to my school community. They asked me to read a poem in the quad at the Black History Month celebration. They asked me to co-organize the disability awareness event, and the school administration even asked me to step up and aid them in some high profile disability work. But to be clear, I've had nearly a decade of anti-Blackness and ableism in my former schools, and only this last year and a half where I was seen and valued for my assets. So yes, there are both hindrances and affirmations, but be clear that one of the messages I get is that schooling gives me mixed messages of love and unkindness when it comes to my identities. Thank you.
Thank you, Helena. Tanette?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree with Helena, what you said. I think anti-Blackness is at the root. And ableism, as you said, that intersectionality there of being Black and disabled definitely matters. And we live in such a Black and ableist society. A couple things come to mind. We use the word anti-Black, and I just want to make sure that we have just it's not a anti-blackness sort of course, but just make sure we have a foundation of what we're talking about when we say anti-blackness, right? And so we're thinking about anti-blackness as both the idea and the system that makes Black life disposable. And so in this context, what, I've seen, and I'll use an example, was working with a mother in California, and she had a son, and I worked with her when that son was 4 and 5 years old, and she kept requesting at his preschool that they support an evaluation for her child. She knew her child was struggling, and they just kept sending him home. She kept asking for support. They kept sending him home and suspending him, to be more direct. But there is this piece where Black children are both overrepresented and underrepresented. And that you might be like, well, how is that possible? But it's two things. Number one, I was in Long Beach last week with some Black families. Some Black families said in some contexts, our kids are invisible, right? They're invisible, so you simply do not see them. And then in other contexts, you are just observing them and policing them so much so that they're all you see. And so we have those two realities which are deeply ingrained in anti-Blackness. So I completely agree that anti-Blackness is at the root of a lot of we see. And when you pair that with the ableist society that we live in, it is very difficult to be a young Black disabled child, and it's very difficult to be a parent of a young Black disabled child.
I see a thread here started by Helena. And I want to answer from my lived experience. My son Andrew, who died in 2013, was a special education student who was a kind and compassionate child, student, and man. He did sometimes do some poor decision making, right? Mostly because of his friendly and trusting nature. He wasn't really, or could not be really, labeled as angry or disruptive. And I feel that his needs, because of that, his needs were unseen as a Black student. He was seen only for the joy he brought to the people he encountered, school staff and others. But his academic difficulties, right, were not seen or addressed for years. He wasn't a management problem in the classroom, and his social talents were good at masking his academic difficulties. As as I reflect on kind of the racial and social dichotomy that Black male students find themselves victim to, really, as Helena and Jeanette have been talking about, Andrew would have been better served if his school had focused more on his whole personhood. This is what Helena's talking about. My thought is that, when the system supports Black students, we get creative and innovative and spend a lot of dollars on classroom management issues, but less time on really helping students, especially students with autism, really gain their academic skills. At least that was my lived experience. And Andrew, I think, and our family experienced something similar to what Helena talks about. He was finally placed in a non-public school as a junior, senior high school student, when his high school said, "We can't serve him. We are going to provide a non-public school." And he entered a very different environment where he flourished both academically and even gained more skills socially. He became more of a leader, things that he had brains of before. But because he was flourishing, he was in a better environment. Um, he just made tremendous gains all around. Um, he did miss his school and his peers during those last 2 years, and it seems that if the system had been more innovative and flexible, he would not have missed out on something that was very important to him. So I think encouraging looking at Black student achievement over time and seeing the nature of the innovations that really produce the outcomes that the students themselves want is really important and will really help with things like achievement, graduation rates, and absenteeism, for example.
Thank you, Yvette. Carla, you want to enter into this space? Yes.
Yes. And I will try to do this quickly because so much was shared with the previous presenters. But I think I can summarize a little bit of what was said. I think about what Rachel started with, talking about we have our students and we have these systems, and but there's a lot of work that's going on in between there. We have our students, but in between the student and the system are adults and other children who already have a set of beliefs that actually dictate their behaviors. And from those behaviors, we start to create these structures, and those structures become our systems. And if you guys would bear with me, I'm going to go personal, professional at the same time. Um, I will share with you that I was 20 years in a profession where later on I decided, my family, we decided to foster to adopt a set of children. My understanding, I thought I had it down. I understood the system, and I spent years after I fostered to adopt my children apologizing to parents that I knew not that I did not know until I actually started to have my own children and see things through what was happening to them. So I'm going to take a personal experience and unpack it and tell you how we had to uplift how structures were being created in the school in which they were in. So I call it the blue bench story. Um, I'm 2 years into this wonderful, highly rated, high quality school. And I'm noticing that there's a blue bench, but the only people on the blue bench were Black boys. And this is a blue bench during recess time when the children were getting in trouble. They would put them on this bench to have some quiet time. So I started to observe that the little Black boys were put on the blue bench, but the little white boys had this interaction where they were given this support. So here's this behavior and belief playing out. Well, those same Black boys later on, by third, fourth grade, became the ones that all of a sudden were in special ed. Never received the supports along the way. So these behaviors that were interpreted in a certain way. And what was interesting, what I was seeing in the non-Black boys and the other children were the same behaviors, but they were treated differently. So we had a set of supports provided for one set of kids, but those same supports were not provided for the little Black boys. So here we have behaviors, we have them being supported differently. So therefore, the structure that was in place for those little Black boys was the pathway to special ed. What's interesting is something that Tunette talked about, this whole overrepresentation and underrepresentation. And I watched this dialogue go along around, well, they do need help. But then all of a sudden, they would insert into that discussion these cultural pieces. They come from a certain family. So it reinforced the behaviors or the beliefs of the people who felt this was the pathway. So what I started to see was these systems that started to be created, and they justified themselves because they were having this disparate conversation going back and forth between what was overrepresentation, what was underrepresentation, and it was all layered with all of this biases that people could not unpack. So I will say we have to be able to unpack the behaviors and assign them, but to do that requires some partnerships, and I will just hold on that. But I'm thinking of Helena, and I'm thinking, Helena, to uplift exactly what people are doing that create this process is probably our first step, or one of the steps that we have to take.
When you're doing panels and you're moderating, you got this urge to want to hop into the conversation, but you want to keep it flowing and moving. Thank you so much for lifting your voices and bringing into view what we need to be paying closer attention to, and also some insights and strategies about what we can do differently. We're going to move into our next question. I'm going to pass it over to Robin.
Thank you. So, as we come into our next question here, we're wanting you to share with us what conditions, practices, or shared commitments help strengthen partnerships between families, communities, and schools to feel more trusting and effective, especially for Black students with disabilities? And can you speak about what tangible strategies you've seen in schools or LEAs that have supported increased or academic or social outcomes for Black students? And we'll be starting with Yvette for this one.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Robin, and thanks, Carla, because I think you are, um, uh, what I'm going to say actually moves from what you ended with. And I just want to make sure to repeat, I think, what both Dr. Hina and Senta said about the Black community, and particularly Senta uh, brought out that the Black community is not a monolith. It's not one cultural thread, right? I'm a Latina woman of African descent. I'm a first generation immigrant to the country. But if you ask the women on this panel, the diversity of thought and history would be quite wide, right? But there's one thing that is a commonality for us. We have an understanding of the shared history of abuse and mistreatment of Black people in America or even the world that that impacts our thoughts and behaviors um, about experience. And um, the failure to acknowledge this and to actively examine our educational policies and practices and partnerships is what perpetuates the harm. Um, it, I talk about this sometimes in trainings that I do, and I call upon professionals to not be afraid of their racist or biased thoughts, kind of like what Helena talks about experiencing, um, but to examine them and to reflect on them. We tell professionals, um, if you have a bad thought about a family, oh, no, no, you can't think like that. That's wrong. Put it out of your head. Suppress, 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 right? And while, yeah, we don't want them to say anything that, like the first thing that might come to mind, like, oh, it's that family. But we want them to recognize that they can't change their um, response, their thoughts, and their resultant action if they don't examine the nature, the origin, and the logic of these thoughts. So that's one thing I think we can do is um, encourage people to examine these thoughts, not suppress them, um, because that's the only way that, as a psychologist, I would say we can change, our thoughts and resultant behaviors. The second idea is really have to engage in community work, gatherings, maybe led by trusted leaders. And I suggest this as a practical solution, right? This demonstrates a desire to learn from the community, but as with other cultural groups, you need a cultural broker that is trusted and connected to the community all the time. I see a lot of systems just want to um, approach communities and say, look at the shiny object I have. Don't you love it? And there are some communities where those shiny objects are deadly, are bad things that you don't want to touch. And so I think it's really important that our systems foster those relationships more actively, especially as I know California is exploring concepts of community schools. Um, Brene Brown talks about, and it's actually related to a great story about ASL, uh, the the sign for vulnerability. Um, and the story that, well, what she says that really belongs to someone else that she frequently quotes. Trust is choosing to make something important to you vulnerable to the actions of someone else. Students and parents are asked to do this all the time. And that vulnerability has been abused by many cultures and ethnic groups. Um, these groups may need to see you being vulnerable first. Making yourself vulnerable to those who want to make connections will help. So you can do that by partnering with those trusted in the community, those trusted cultural brokers. But for educational systems, that's going to take a lot of courage. So.
Thanks, Yvette. Carla?
Um, I'm actually going to continue with the thread that Dr. Baptiste has kind of put out there about, I think she's asking us to interrogate some things. And I'm going to ask that we can interrogate two things at the same time they seem to be counter narratives, but they actually are part of the same complexity of this. And that is the underrepresentation and the overrepresentation. The underrepresentation, there are two professors, Farkas and Morgan. And I'm not saying I agree with their research. I'm saying, but they do elevate something that is interesting, which is when you look at underrepresentation, it's where the underrepresentation happens. It happens when you look at learning disabilities. When you look at the supports that students would need when it comes to reading and to math, but when it comes to behavior, it's overrepresentation. So there's this tug of war that's going on. So that's one thing. The second thing is even how we as parents see how we can engage the system. I am in a system where I sit with some, I'm gonna call them affluent parents, and I see them seeking supports for in special ed. They are looking to identify their children with special needs to access supports. Well, the counter to that is that we have individuals, families, African American, who are seeking support. There are some behaviors we need support with, but do we necessarily need it to be the only way to get it is through special ed? So we don't trust that process. And so we have this counter narrative going on with ourselves about, I need some support, but is this the pathway? And so we struggle with this overrepresentation because we see a pathway always through behavior. And a lot of times the behavior comes because there's issues around the learning. So I think there needs to be some unpacking. But if we go even deeper to Helena's point about this, where do we start to unpack the biases, the true belief that there are sets of people who are not worthy? And I don't think we can pretend it's not real because we're living in a bigger society that is sending that message out every single day. That if you see a person of color in excellence, it's because they got there through DEI. If you see a child over there who is struggling and they happen to be African American, well, that makes sense. So now I'm already changed again how I'm looking at the supports. So I would just leave with we're going to have to actually look deeper into the information, the data, and how we are putting kids in categories. And we got to rethink how we access supports. And I have a whole idea about that too, but I'm going to stop there.
Each question I know has so much behind it, and so we appreciate you all sharing your pieces that you're able to bring forward here. And certainly, I think we could spend hours and hours and all week with you all. So thank you, though, Carla. Helena, let's pass it over to you.
The most important shared condition I can think of is that everyone at home and at school believes that we are capable. We are capable of academic excellence with the right supports. We are capable of good friendships. We are capable of leadership. The condition that is a cornerstone for me is the call for everyone to see us as capable, to throw out your deficit lens and replace it with an asset-based lens when you gaze my way. A shared commitment we must have with each other and the intimate and important relationship between home and school is that it is okay to be fierce with each other. It is okay for my parents to advocate hard for me, and it is okay for me to self-advocate hard too. And it is okay to question schooling as a family because after all, history has shown us that rights are never given but have to be fought for. We should allow each other to push each other to greatness without getting too easily wounded and hurt in the struggle for racial equality and disability justice. As far as practices that support me as a Black student, I know this sounds simple, but it is a constant miss for so many educators. Let us see ourselves reflected in the curriculum you are teaching. Let us see Black girls with dark skin and locks in the literature we read. Let us read Black authors and study Black greatness. Let me look in the mirror of schooling and see my gorgeous reflection looking back at me. Show me Black excellence as something I can strive for every day in my life. And as for practices with disability in mind, I just have to call for rethinking and decolonizing assessments. I have a working memory disorder, so why does every assessment have to be grounded in the singular ability to memorize? Why do performing arts and poetry communities put up front in bold font that the only way to participate is to have your piece fully memorized? I have a history teacher this year who recently gave us a full test, but thoughtfully gave it to us in 3 sections over 3 days. One day for the essay, one day for the short answer, and one day for the matching and recall. And wow, did that ever lower my test anxiety? And it was such an simple act of caring for her to do that. So let us do a short video to show comprehension. Let me write an original poem to show comprehension depth. Let me paint or draw or dance my assessment. Why is it the singular skill of memorize, memorize, memorize? I really think we have to rethink assessments.
Thanks, Helena. Tanette, please go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree, especially with that last part of what Helena said, because I was about to say that unfortunately, I wish that, unfortunately, I don't have a lot of great examples of how we've done this well in schools, but I have excellent examples of how we've done it well in homes and in communities. And when Helena was given that example, I'm like, those are the things that I've seen in excellent Black homeschool programs, in excellent Black communities. And so the idea that there is not just one way to share what you know is incredibly powerful, and something that, like, even me, growing up in a Baptist church, there were multiple ways that when I was doing things that we got to share. And so I just want to uplift that. I also want to just name that as we start to talk about these partnerships, the ways that we can improve our relationships with Black families, it's important, if you are working in schools, that you don't recognize this as just something that white people need to work on or need to think about. Anti-Blackness is embodied in the very lives of Black people themselves, and also in other people of color. And so I just want to start there, that this work is everybody's work, because if you're working in education, you are working in a system that was never designed for Black people in general, but Black and disabled, absolutely not. So I just want to make sure that we're on the same page, that none of us are free from doing the work. To some of the early panelists, you have to be in community with Black communities, right? There is no such thing as a partnership if you're still trying to do things school-centric, right? If you're still trying to invite me to the thing that could have been an email, if you're still setting the time and all the parameters around what it looks like to be in partnership, that sounds like a probation officer. You know what I'm saying? So it's just not real or realistic. I also think that we started this off naming anti-blackness that is very present in education systems and naming ableism. I think that as educators, as leaders, as anybody that are thinking about the conditions of Black children with disabilities, you have to be able to listen for, look for, and name anti-Blackness and ableism in all of its settings. And you have to be willing to disrupt those things. I also think that we got to resist scarcity tactics, and this idea that there's not enough for every group. I see that a lot as someone who has lived in California, and across all the states that I've lived in, I've seen a very similar thing where we think about one group of students that needs us more than the other. There cannot be scarcity if we're going to do the right thing, especially by and for Black children. We have to resist that narrative, and we have to be willing to think about Black children. Who are we centering? We have to be able to ask ourselves, whose experiences are we centering when we're making decisions? Back to the idea of assessment. Who are we centering? Is white the default? Right? Who do we have in mind? Is affluent the default? Right? Like all of these things we have to keep in our mind, even as we think about times that we're going to meet with families, how we're going to talk to them, when we're going to share with them. When we make these decisions, who are we thinking about? And I also think that we have to be willing to make room for joy. Helena alluded to that there need to be Black excellence on 10 at everywhere we are. Schools are not places of joy more often than not, right? And so how do we make room for joy? We want to be in partnership, but it's boring. We want to be in partnership, but right, like there is not joy. Who wants to be in partnership like that? Right? That's a part of that being in community, that there is room for joy. And the last thing I'll say, because, well, there's two more things that I'll say, and then I'll close it up. I know we're on time, but I will put some resources that I wanted to share in the chat. There are a couple of groups, Black groups, parent groups that are doing wonderful things that you can learn from. We'll also put some scholars in there, some academic journals that could be helpful. But if you are in community, you also got to be willing to throw out all the things you've read, all the things that you've learned, and say, this is what the community needs because I'm in community with them. Sometimes we can get so stuck in best practices, but who was the default again, right? When those best practices became a thing. And the last thing is just a freedom dream together. I had an opportunity to be with parents all around the country in Puerto Rico, a number of Black parents. And for Black parents with children with disabilities, I kept hearing that they had never been asked their freedom dreams. They had never been able to think beyond the struggle or just trying to get access, trying to get services, right? Trying to survive, that they had not been able to really think about what do they want for their children, for themselves, for their communities. And so making time to do those things and not just to be thinking about the survival or the struggle for access and all of these things, I think is important. But I'll stop for the sake of time.
Tanette, thank you. I think, just each of the practices and strategies and ideas just across each panelist, there were so many things packed in there, and the ideas of what has worked, what hasn't worked, and it gives us space to pause and think about what areas we might already do some of these things and what areas where we can do better, or what areas where we can consider braiding these into the work that we're doing. So thank you for that. Over to Senta.
Yeah, I love, Tanette, that you said we're right on time. I will remember that. We're not out of time, but we're right on time. I want to take a few moments and just do a thoughtful check-in because we are at upon our time. But if we could just all lean in and lift up for a moment, perhaps a final statement, something that you would really want people to center their hearts, their minds, their thoughts, or their actions once they log off this Zoom. I know it's a little bit of an impromptu, but it would be very powerful to end with something that you feel on your heart, top of mind, that before people go, I want you to hear this or remember this.
So I'm going to end I think in less than a minute, say this. What everyone's talking about is belonging. How do we ensure that not only that children belong, but families in the culture they bring belong? And that's about building capacity and understanding with the adults, with the families, and with the teachers and with administration. And so I'm going to uplift a space where that is going on in a school district, and it's called Shoestrings, and it's in San Francisco Unified School District. And what makes this process around providing support, and this program is not specific to African American, but it just so happens to be where a lot of the African American boys and now Latino boys are being referred to. But it is a bright spot, and it is about the adults, the families, and the teaching staff understanding what makes that child successful. And I'll end with that.
Mhm.
Can I go next? Because I have to go
Sure,
to class.
absolutely.
The clear message about Black and disabled students I want from the professionals around me are that you are engaged in questioning systems that oppress me and are asking these questions of yourselves in your school. The clear message about disabled Black bodies in your school is that you are seeking transformative ways to step up and support us. The clear message that I want to hear from you as a Black disabled girl in school is that you are without a doubt a champion of me and for me. So thank you.
Thank you. Yvette or Jeanette?
Well, I just wanted to support Helena's statement. I thought about this, and there's research that says, if at least one person in the life of a child supports them unconditionally, uh, they uh, they are open to an unknown world of possibilities and opportunities. And I think in just tacking that on to what's been said is, you know, Black students need the same things that all students need, but they need um, the people around them to really believe in their possibilities.
Thank you.
And yeah, I can go. So there was a study from a survey that was done with Black students across the state of California, and 1 in 4 Black fifth graders said that they were unhappy. Right, 1 in 4 Black fifth graders in California, and unpacking why that is, right, is longer work. But the one thing that I want to say, first of all, to any Black parent or a Black student, I want to echo the word from a resource from a group that is doing some phenomenal work. It's a Zulu word, sawubona, which means I see you. So I want to start with I see you. And to everybody who is doing the work, and you are here because you want to figure out how we get this right, I want you to see us, to see Black children, to see Black children with disabilities. This work is not something that we should do, that sounds good, that will be a good idea. It is necessary. When we see the statistics that we started out with, we know that we have huge concerns across this state and across this country. But I think it all begins with this idea that if we can see each other, then we can move forward. So it just starts with Sawubona, I see you. Thank you.
Well, we certainly see you, Dr. Powell, Dr. Bryant, Dr. Baptiste, and Miss Helena. We thank you from the bottom and tops of our hearts for not only showing up, but speaking up and standing up on behalf of all children, but with a lens and a focus because it's deeply needed for Black students. Thank you so much. I am going to turn it back over to Robin. I thank everyone who came here today, and I wish you all a powerful rest of the week.
Thank you. So I want to thank our panelists. So thank you so much for your time and expertise and sharing so openly with us today. What you shared does bring to life exactly why this matters for families, for educators, for system leaders. And this is the work, and we are grateful to do it alongside you as partners. Um, as we move back to the slides, just real quickly, we did want to offer those joining us opportunity to extend your appreciation to our panelists for their time and ask that you share for your reflections on this mosaic of appreciation. So by using this Mentimeter tool, you can type your answers, you can use the QR code, we've got the link in the chat. So we do hope you'll do that. And when we post the recording, we will no longer have the live link. Instead, we will display the final mosaic of affirmations. Next slide. We have a resource handout. Asenta, did you want to share a few words about the resource handout?
Yes, we've put together a powerful compilation of information that has been given to us and collected from California Department of Education, California Department of Social Services, as well as national and international bodies of work that we think would be really helpful in reinforcing the conversation that we had today. Equally important, we want to lift up and amplify the work that is being done by our panelists. You will see information in the resource list about their work as well. And we just ask you to take some time and look it over because it will help you as you continue to think about this work and give attention and action to it, whether it's in your home, in your classroom, at your site, in your district, or in your communities. It's a powerhouse of information.
Thanks, Senta. And I do want to point out that the scholarly articles and reference that Tanette shared with us earlier are in this embedded into that resource as well. So we could go to the next slide. So we do have a feedback survey and we do want to hear from you. What was your biggest takeaway from our session today? Is there anything further you'd be interested in learning? Tell us about your family partnership stories. What's working well? What isn't? Other topics we can lift up. Please take the opportunity to share with us. And you may see that come along as another topic as we go. Next slide. Speaking of other topics, our next session will be coming up again next month. And these are the fourth Thursday of every month from 11 to 12. And we will take a break in the summer, but visit our QR code in the link and you can see the registrations for future ones. And we look forward to you joining us. And of course, they are recorded as well. Next slide. So on behalf of the California Department of Education and Seeds of Partnership and Sacramento County Office of Education, I want to acknowledge and thank Helena Donato Sapp, Dr. Tanette Powell, Dr. Yvette Baptiste, and Dr. Carla Bryant. Through learning together, we strengthen partnerships for students with disabilities, and we thank all of you for joining us and learning together with us in this webinar.